WSO since 2019 after attending the Sikh Youth Leadership Institute. Most recently, he had been serving as the Director of Finance for the last 4 years. He is a senior accountant at a public practice firm in Burnaby, BC, where he works on audit engagements and prepares tax returns for private companies, not-for-profit organizations, and individuals. Outside of work, he also serves as the Director for Sikh Heritage Society BC, where he helped launch the Sikh Heritage Month celebrations in BC in 2018. He has also been involved with many other Sikh youth programming and children's camps across Canada and the US. I would like to welcome Jagtar Singh to the stage just to share a few comments with us.
Thanks, Nafri. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. I won't take that much of your time. We're all here for our special guest, Gurpreet Singh. But just to say that today the topic is India's oppression of Sikh activists. We were talking the other day, our senior vice president, Sharanjit Kaur, she was saying how, for those of us that grew up here and were born here or brought up here, it was normalized for us that if we speak out or if we engage in any kind of activism, that we would be susceptible to threats from India. And if you think about how many other communities grew up like that, what other community was that normalized for, that you would not be safe if you exercised your right to free speech? It was normalized that we had spies in our places of worship, that if we went back to India, we might be threatened, our family in India might be threatened. And now with the announcement of the Prime Minister that we all just saw, hopefully it's becoming less and less acceptable to the mainstream media. Before, when you try to tell someone, it was so far from their, realm of possibility. It was really unbelievable. But now we see that, it's easier to express and it's easier to get action on these things. But this will always be the reality of Sikhs. If we're, if we're fighting for truth, if we're fighting for justice, if we're speaking truth to power, no government will accept that we believe in a higher power, that they are answerable to a higher power as well. And we've seen this in the legacy of our history. Time and time again, Sikhs have fought for, Sikhs have died for this right to protect people against tyrannical governments, and for the safety of all people. And this is really the realm that WSO operates in. A lot of the work we do is not public. We work with media organizations, we work with elected officials. So it's not as public as we might see with other organizations, but it's still important. And you can see some of the impact that we've had a decade or two ago. For those who are familiar, the media would not present our story at all. They would not present our narrative. But because of the relationships we built, the work we've done behind the scenes, with the Trudeau announcement, with the arrest and shutdown of Punjab by Amritpal Singh in March, it was largely the Sikh narrative that was in the mainstream media. And that's a huge shift from decades earlier. So that's a lot of the work that the WSO is doing. And it's mostly volunteer. Till recently, we only had one paid staff. A lot of you know him, Gurpreet Singh. And actually, when I joined as Director of Finance, the first question I'd actually get is, so you're getting paid now? No one's getting paid. It's a volunteer board. And recently, we had the fortune of hiring 2 more people. So you have a staff of 3 now. If you compare that to other organizations like the Muslim Council and CIJA as well, they have dozens of staff. They have dozens of staff. They have presence in Ottawa. They're lobbying to the government on a regular basis. We just had our lobby day on Monday. where we met with elected officials, and we get to do that maybe once, maybe twice a year. And they would also tell us, the capacity of these other lobby groups. And why do they have so much capacity? Because this is something that, their community believes in putting money into their community. They believe in this kind of work, right? A lot of you here support us as well. But there's a lot more we can grow, and there's a lot of room to grow as well. We started the Desvand program a couple of years ago. A lot of you subscribed to that as well, and that's what's allowed us to get to where we are today. But there's a lot of work to be done, and I hope you can see that the work we're doing is really important, and we just hope for your continued support. I'll let Navpreet Kaur get back to the main event now. Thank you for coming. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Thank you, Danish Singh, for those comments. Although Sikhs have been facing oppression and genocide for decades, this is nothing new for any of us. This year, we saw a lot more limelight on the Sikh struggle, not only within our spaces and media, but across the globe. The overall crackdown on Sikh activism and Sikh activists was notably witnessed during the Kisan Morcha. More recently, with the circumstances leading up to the countless arrests of many activists within Punjab, including by Amritpal Singh. And very recently, right here in BC, the assassination of Bhai Hardeep Singh on Canadian soil. These tactics used by the Indian government are not new, and we've been seeing this happen for years, where any form of dissent demonstrated by our brothers or sisters in Punjab or even abroad is not gone unseen or unnoticed by the Indian government. And for some of us, we're lucky, and we get to continue to live our lives. But for others, like our brother, Jagtar Singh Johal, they continue to face the brutalities and injustices from the hands of the Indian government. Jagtar Singh Johal was arrested in 2017 by the Punjab police due to his activism work through his Never Forget 1984 website. And I know from speaking to other members on the team and speaking to some of the attendees here today that this case hits really close to home for many of us, because any of us could be Jagtar Singh. We all use our social media platforms to raise awareness about the ongoing struggle in the Sikh community. But the question that we come across is, do we deserve to be abducted and then arbitrarily detained for that? It's clear that this is just another way that the Indian government uses to further suppress Sikh activism and the crackdown on any type of dissent that showcases the mass human rights violations committed against Sikhs and also other minorities within India. To speak more about Jagtar Singh and his activism work, and also the current state of Jagtar Singh's case, we have here today with us from the UK, Gurpreet Singh, the brother of Jagtar Singh. Before I introduce you to Gurpreet Singh, I would actually just like to take a minute and introduce you to Guntaskar, who will be moderating this conversation with him. Guntaskar holds a BA in Political Science and International Relations from the Carleton University, and she went on to complete a Master's in Peace and Conflict Studies at the University of Bradford, where she explored the ongoing need for formal conflict resolution in Punjab today, post-1984. The same year, Guntaskar became the first Sikh Punjabi Canadian to participate in a 6-week intensive minority rights fellowship program at the United Nations High Commission for Human Rights in Geneva, Switzerland. As a lawyer, her practice focuses primarily on family law. She's passionate about human rights, international law and conflict, gender issues, world religions, and strengthening interpersonal dialogue, particularly between Sikh Canadians and Indigenous populations. Guntaskar has been an active volunteer with the WSO since 2001 in various roles within BC and nationally. As I mentioned before, we have Gurpreet Singh here today in the UK to talk about our brother Jagtar Singh Johal. Gurpreet Singh completed his law degree in the UK in 2011. He is a father of 2 children and resides in Scotland. He currently practices as an immigration and asylum solicitor and is also an elected councillor in the West Dunbartonshire for the Labour Party. In 2018, he founded the Sikh Legal Assistance Board, which provides legal aid for political prisoners. Gurpreet Singh is the older brother of Jagtar Singh Johal, whom we also call Jaggi, and has been campaigning for his release since November of 2017. Please welcome Guntas Kaur and Gurpreet Singh.
Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Thank you so much for taking time out of your schedules to join all of us together and in welcoming very warmly Gurpreet Singh Virji to the stage and to this conversation. We're absolutely honored to have him with us to share not only his, but his brother's lived reality for the last 6 years. So with that, I think we'll just get right into the conversation. Virji, welcome, and thank you so much for taking the time out to speak with us and share everything that's been going on with you and Jagtar Singh for the last 6 years with us. We really appreciate that you're making the trip out and spending the week with Canadian Sangat across the country. Thank you so much. So for those in the audience who don't know you or your brother and your lived reality for the last so many years, could you give us a little background on yourself and your brother, Jaggi Johal or Jagtar Singh Johal, in particular, your Sikh activism, and perhaps outline that for us?
Okay. Thank you, Ji. First of all, I want to say Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. So that Fateh was from me. That's a tired Fateh because I've been on the go for the last week, thanks to WSO and their advocacy skills. So it's been an impactful week where we started from Brampton and now we're ending here at Surrey. So thank you for giving up your Friday night. Now the second Fateh is from Jaggi himself, because on the 18th of October, on Jaggi's wedding anniversary, he had phoned and I had told him that I was coming to Canada. So Jaggi wanted this Fateh to be said to everyone wherever I went. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Now, we're all here, and we all know what happened on the 31st of October, 1984. And it's only right that we say Pranam Shahidan nu, because they gave their yesterday for our today. And it's really important for me to say that because this was the focus of Jaggi's work. Many of us know about Never Forget 84 website. Many of us know about the pictures, and many of us trend or at June and in November, and we say we never forget 84. I met some Singhs earlier on in Ottawa, and I was told that Jaggi carried on the work of some Singhs that had done it previously, but what Jaggi did, he took it to a different dimension. When Jaggi took it to a different dimension, I meant he took the Jeevaniya of Singhs and Singhniya that had given their Shahidi and translated it from Punjabi to English, because it's easier to put it in English so that Najwan can actually understand what happened. I met a young chap in Brampton, and he said, Virji, because of Jaggi, I got to find out about my Nana Ji Shahidi, how he passed away and how he was killed. And he wouldn't have known if it wasn't for Jaggi. I've been meeting Sangat across Canada who are all telling me that as a result of Jaggi, they learned about Never Forget 84. They learned about the historic human rights violations that were taking place. So it's testament, even to date, people are still talking about Never Forget 84. People are still talking about Jaggi. And I'm proud to be his brother. I'm proud because Maharaj gave Jaggi that seva. But as a result of Jaggi's seva, Maharaj gave me this seva to be able to speak in front of all you. And I'm not going to say that it's not been tiring, but I want to send one message before I leave here today. And that message is, on a spiritual level, we've achieved so much, this family, because Maharaj has given us this seva to document, to talk about the Shaheeds of 1984 and continue to talk about them. On a human level, we've had the worst experience for the last 6 years. But we believe in Maharaj, and we believe in Maharaj's bharosa, because Maharaj is the one that's going to bring Jaggi back. And Sangat, you guys, are the ones that give us the energy to keep fighting. So it's really important to take this away. Danavi dunya te sada parivar bahut dukhi hai. Danavi dunya te ਆਪਾਂ ਗੱਡੀ ਮੰਗਦੇ ਆ, ਆਪਾਂ ਜੌਬ ਮੰਗਦੇ ਆ, ਆਪਾਂ ਪੈਸੇ ਮੰਗਦੇ ਆ। ਧਾਰਮਿਕ ਦੁਨੀਆ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਪਾਂ ਅਰਦਾਸ ਕਰਦੇ ਆ ਹਰ ਰੋਜ਼ ਕਿ ਮਹਾਰਾਜ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਸੇਵਾ ਬਖਸ਼ ਦਿਓ। ਕਈ ਆਪਾਂ ਮੰਗਦੇ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਆ, ਆਪਾਂ ਕਈ ਵਾਰੀ ਇਹ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੋਚਦੇ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਕਿ ਮਹਾਰਾਜ ਸਾਡੀ ਝੋਲੀ ਵਿੱਚ ਪਾ ਦੂੰਗਾ। ਤੇ ਮਹਾਰਾਜ ਨੇ ਪਾ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਝੋਲੀ ਵਿੱਚ ਜੱਗੀ ਦੀ ਰਾਹੀ। ਹਿਸਟਰੀ ਵਿੱਚ ਜੱਗੀ ਨੇ ਆਪਣਾ ਨਾਂ ਲਿਖਾਤਾ, ਲਿਖਿਆ ਵਾ, ਲਿਖਾਈ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਵਾ, ਪਰ ਨਾਲ ਦੀ ਨਾਲ ਉਹਨੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਵੱਡੇ ਭਰਾ ਦਾ ਵੀ ਨਾਂ ਲਿਖਾਤਾ। ਮੇਰੀ ਕੀ ਸੇਵਾ, ਮੇਰੀ ਕੋਈ ਨਹੀਂ। ਮੈਂ ਤਾਂ ਸਿਰਫ ਆ ਕੇ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਸੰਗਤ ਵਿੱਚ ਗੱਲ ਕਰ ਲੈਂਦਾ, ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਦੱਸ ਦਿੰਦਾ ਪਰਿਵਾਰ 'ਤੇ ਕੀ ਬੀਤਣ ਡਈ ਆ। ਪਰ ਲੇਕਿਨ ਮਹਾਰਾਜ ਨੇ ਸੇਵਾ ਲੈਣੀ ਸੀ ਅਤੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਪਰਿਵਾਰ ਕੋਲ ਲੈ ਲਈ। ਸੋ ਜੇ ਆਪਾਂ ਧਾਰਮਿਕ ਰੂਪ 'ਤੇ ਦੇਖੀਏ, ਸਾਡੇ ਪਰਿਵਾਰ ਨਾਲੋਂ ਕੋਈ ਚੰਗਾ ਨਹੀਂ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਮਹਾਰਾਜ ਨੇ ਉਹ ਸੇਵਾ ਲੈਣੀ ਸੀ। This is a message that I want all of you to take away. We are disappointed that this has been going for this long, but at the end of the day, we also have Prosan Maharaj, that Maharaj chose our family, and Maharaj chose this family to do this seva. Because as a result of this seva, we're talking about Never Forget 84, we also started a charity called Sikh Legal Assistance Board, in which we have got 80 to 90 people out of Indian jails in the last 5 years. So it started at Never Forget 84, but in 2023, we're still talking about the human rights violations that have taken place. 4th of November 2017 was the day our world turned upside down, because Jaggi's wife phoned, Paji unu lege, Paji unu lege, or Paji unu lege. And I'm in my bed at this time. It's about 10:25 in the morning, and I'm saying, "Kitte lege ki hoya?" My Masi's daughter takes the phone, and she says that they were going shopping. The car was intercepted. Jaggi was taken out of the car. He was hooded and bungled into a van. So the first thing I thought, Jaggi's just had a marriage. People think we've got money, and as a result, he's probably been kidnapped. And I've said to my Masi's daughter, just go back to the house in Jalandhar where my Masi stays, and what we'll do is go to the police. And at the same time, we phoned the UK services, the consular services in London to say this has happened and we're worried about where he is. So that's when everything really started, was the 4th of November when Jaggi was abducted. I'm going to use the word abducted, and later on through our conversation, I'm going to justify the word abducted and also the legal definition that's been declared by the UN Working Group of arbitrary detention. So that's where we're at 4th of November. Going a step back, Jaggi is the middle brother. So it's myself, Jaggi, and I've got a younger brother. In 2007, our mother passed away. So at the time, it was the three brothers, my dad, my nana, and nanny. We stayed in one house. After my mum passed away, I got married. So there was a bit of more happiness, because my wife really gelled within the family, and she made it easier for my nana and nanny, because it's not easy to lose your daughter. Then I had my kids. During this whole process, my wife would keep saying, Jaggi viah karala, Jaggi viah karala. And what Jaggi would keep saying, ਤੈਨੂੰ ਤਾਂ ਇੰਡੀਅਨ ਸੂਟ ਚਾਹੀਦੇ ਆ, ਉਹ ਤਾਂ ਸਸਤੇ ਪੈਣੇ ਆ, ਵਿਆਹ ਕਰਾਉਣ ਨੂੰ ਕੀ ਲੋੜ ਆ, ਮੈਂ ਤੈਨੂੰ ਉੱਦੇ ਲੈ ਦਿੰਦਾ, ਕਿੰਨੇ ਲੈਣੇ ਆ. But eventually he agreed to get married. So in April 2017, we traveled to Punjab, and this is when Jaggi met his wife. They got engaged, and then he travels back to Punjab in October 2017, and he gets married on the 18th of October. Now, as a younger brother, I'm inspired by my brother, He is younger than me. I would say, and I have no shame of saying this, he's intelligent, far more intelligent than I am. When I said my mum passed away, my mum was so happy when she heard that I was going to law school, sorry, university. I've caught these words from Canada, so university. And when my mum passed away, it was either, do I look after the family business with my dad, because I'm the eldest, and give up the studying, or do I continue? Jaggi and my younger brother decided, nahi, mummy da supna pura karna wa, tu vakil ban, because that's what she wanted, because she was so happy कि मेरा मुंडा law pan चला हुआ और वकील बनूंगा. So I owe a lot to both of my brothers. I owe a lot to Jaggi because he didn't have to give up his education. He gave it up so that I could go on to become a lawyer. And I started off with Maharaj is Kirpa. Who knew that law degree, that knowledge is actually going to come in helpful 6 years on? In 2017, this is Maharaj's Kirpa. And I'm going to keep talking about Maharaj because Maharaj is who we have our prosa on. Yes, so Jaggi was intelligent. Jaggi is intelligent. Jaggi also gave me a black eye. So he punched me, but I had to tell people at school that it wasn't Jaggi, that I had walked into a door. Otherwise, I would be telling people that Jaggi had beaten up his older brother. So as all brothers do, we had our challenges, we had our conversations, but we were a close family because we stayed together, and this is what we wanted. The reason I mentioned my mum, because at Jaggi's wedding, my wife played the mother role for the wedding. Because Jaggi had built up a really good relationship with my wife, and it wasn't easy, but my wife did what she could. So what I'm trying to show here is that we have a good family unit, we're together, and Jaggi really, really had a good relationship with my kids. My youngest son was 4 years old at the time that Jaggi was abducted. So it's easy for me to go back and think what's happened. When Free Jaggi Now campaign started, for 3 weeks, I didn't go home. I went from Scotland to England. Sorry, I'm from Scotland and not England, because I've been asked so many times, Paji England to aaya tusi? So we are from UK, but I'm from Scotland. So we traveled there just to do a chat with Nojwans to see what we can do, and the Free Jaggi Now campaign started. I didn't go home for 3 weeks. When I went back home, my 4-year-old wasn't happy that his dad's back. He looked behind me, and he looked behind me, and I said, "Ki hoya?" He goes, "Jajji chacha kithe hai?" And straight away, tears came out my eyes. Each time I say this, and I have no shame, water comes out my eyes even right now. Because he was like, "Chacha kithe hai?" He didn't ask where his dad was. That's the pyar that he's got, a 4-year-old. He goes to Jaggi chachi no leke nahi anda. And I didn't have an answer. What was I supposed to say at that point? But that's the kind of impact it's had on a 4-year-old who is now 10, who doesn't want to go to India. When you say to him, "Nahi, main nahi India jana, utte Jaggi chachi na ki kita." That's the impact. That's the difference it makes on a child. And I've done some shows earlier on, and we talk about Karkul Singhs. Karkul Singhs were not born Karkul. They were made Karkul. There was reasons because they had to stand up against injustices. Now, this is what young children are seeing. You guys are all here today, and you're listening to me because this is what our family has been going through. But what you don't realize is your support is you guys that give the energy, because Maharaj has brought you as Sangat. And as a result of that Sangat, we're able to talk to each other, and you're able to energize us to make sure that Jaggi comes back home. So this is who Jaggi is in a nutshell. I'm hoping I've been able to tell you that we are a close family unit. I do miss my brother. I am sure once he's back, he's going to shout at me. He will say, "Tu aida nahi kita, aida nahi kita. Aa meri photo tu ka to kaddi baar." I'm sure he's going to do this, but we'll just take it because कि ਆਪਾਂ ਤਾਂ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਆ ਉਹ ਘਰ ਆ ਜਾਵੇ ਵਾਪਸ. So that's the kind of relationship that I've had with Jaggi, and that's the impact he's had on my life because he's taught me a lot, even though he's a younger brother, but he's taught me a lot.
Thank you, Virji. I think each of us in the room can see our own families in that relationship, our siblings, our rivalries, the reluctance to admit that sometimes younger siblings are probably an amalgamation of everyone older and the best of the bunch. My sister will love hearing that. You know, something I caught on to your conversation and the pieces that you shared, as well as taking in Danish Singh's remarks and keeping in mind that the topic of our conversation today, oppression of Sikh activists, and you know so aptly just mentioned that Kharkus aren't born, they're made. I think in Canada, and perhaps it's the same in the UK, as Danish Singh said and Sharanjit shared earlier this week, it was normal for us to hear about agents within our community. But I think it's also normal in our community for us to somehow, in the beginning at least, question this activism spirit. Where is it coming from? How does it develop? And are these issues that we care about as Sikhs? I think we realize that they're about Sikhs, but they speak to a global narrative on human rights and humanity's right to prosper and to experience freedom of speech, freedom of religion. So let's take a step back. And you've mentioned Jaggi's website and his activism and how it moved people. But I think so often we never look at how activism starts. And what is it what values bring us to that conversation or to those issues and to digging deeper within our own community, but also seeing those experiences shared across other communities. And in the spirit of, you know, Sarbata Pala, I think from a genuine place of wanting everyone's lives to be better, Sikhs embrace that call and approach activism. But where does it start? And so I wanted to look back at the very real and very genuine human emotions and interests that brought yourself and brought Jaggi to, you know, the Never Forget website and the issues that Sikhs, not issues, sorry, the experiences of Sikhs when it comes to truly horrific human rights atrocities.
So, Benji, I think the element is the Jews have learned about the Holocaust, but we have been painted, there's a picture that the Indian state have painted that the Shaheeds were terrorists. I genuinely believe that Jaggi wanted to prove that wrong, because there's an element that we have. Now, in our Ardas, we talk about the Shaheeds. We say in respect of them, but the Indian state has just put this picture in our heads that everybody there was a terrorist. I'm going to share a personal aspect of this. Around about 2013 or 14, I think it was, Sonia Dul, Sikh Kuri, apparently, did a BBC documentary about Sant Jalan Singh Ji Pindrawali. And we watched it. My Nana watched it. He didn't understand anything, but he's seen Santaji. And at the end of it, he goes, Santaji, ki kahin. And I said to him that they're saying that it was because of him, Harmandir Sahib was attacked. It was because of him, all these people were killed. And he said, eh tak hai nahi. He goes, Santaji na hunda, ta aaj aapa nahi hunde. My Nana doesn't speak English. He doesn't write English. He can't write in Punjabi. He's illiterate. And this is what he's telling us. And this is where it's really important that we listen to our elders. ਜੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਘਰ ਨਾਨਾ ਨਾਨੀ ਦਾਦਾ ਦਾਦੀ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਕੋਲ ਬਹੁਤ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਹੈਗੀਆਂ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਆਪਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਦੱਸਦੇ ਆ ਆਪਣੀ ਐਕਟਿਵਿਜ਼ਮ ਤਾਂ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਹੋਈ ਆ ਆਪਣੇ ਸਾਹਿਬਜ਼ਾਦਿਆਂ ਨੇ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕੁਰਬਾਨੀਆਂ ਦਿੱਤੀਆਂ, ਗੁਰੂ ਤੇਗ ਬਹਾਦਰ ਜੀ ਨੇ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕੁਰਬਾਨੀ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਆ, ਹਿੰਦ ਦੀ ਚਾਦਰ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਐਵੇਂ ਤਾਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਹਿਣ ਡਏ। The Human Rights Act is what Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji did. That he provided that, and that's what I believe, as a human rights lawyer, is where the Human Rights Act comes from. Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji. Guru Gobind Singh Ji, at the age of 9, said, who is better to give Shahidi at that point than Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji? How hard must that have been? But that's the kind of element, that's where our activism comes from. The ਛੋਟੇ ਸਾਹਿਬਜ਼ਾਦੇ ਬਾਬੇ ਬਣ ਗਏ। ਕਿਉਂ ਬਾਬੇ ਬਣ ਗਏ? ਕਿੰਨੀ ਉਮਰ ਸੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ? ਇੱਥੇ ਆਪਣੀ ਐਕਟਿਵਿਜ਼ਮ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਆ ਤੇ ਇਹੀ ਆਪਾਂ ਅੱਗੇ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਆ। That's why it's really important, our sisters, our mothers here, that we tell our kids about the qurbaniya of the shaheeds. We tell our children about the qurbaniya of our Sahibzade and tell them about the history, because that's where the activism really starts, and it's from our house. That's what I would say. Jaggi, I don't know where his, to genuinely, if I'm being honest, I don't know how it started. He was born in 1987, after 1984. But surely he's read something. If you remember at the start, I said that some Singhs told me that they were doing seva. And then Jaggi took it to the next level by putting it in English and putting these Jeevaniya out. I believe if Jaggi has inspired many, Jaggi was inspired by their work. The Tadi Vara that we have in the Guru Kar, it could have been from there. So genuinely, that's an honest answer for Jaggi's aspect. For my own aspect, as an immigration solicitor, I've been advocating for the rights for whether it's Afghans, Iraqis, Iranians, no, everyone's the same, and I advocate for their human rights. So why wouldn't I do it for our own community? So I think the activism aspect of that, that's where it's starting point from us, but it's embedded in our blood. It's in our genes. Because Sikhs are supposed to stand up against injustices. How can we watch an injustice take place? How are we going to answer the Guru when we go ਕਿ ਤੇਰੇ ਮੋਰੇ ਆ ਹੋਣ ਡਿਆ ਸੀ ਤਾਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਇੱਧਰ ਨੂੰ ਤੁਰ ਕੇ ਚਲ ਗਏ? I think that's where the activism, Benji, comes from.
I appreciate that. And I appreciate the point that you made. And I think I'm glad you brought it up, because this is where my question stemmed from, was that India so often creates this narrative that if you disagree with the national story, the national perception of what India is as a country, not only domestically but also on the international stage, you are extremist, you are terrorist. They have taken these words completely out of context and applied them to individuals like Jagtar Singh Johal that come from a place of true human care for one another, and that sees that humanity in each other and wants the oppression to end, the injustice to end, regardless of whether it's Sikhs, other minorities, or and against faith beliefs or lifestyles. So, with respect to your brother's case, I just wanted to get a sense of where is it today, and what, from a legal perspective, and this is what happens when you put two lawyers on the stage, where does the case sit today, and what is Jagtar Singh looking at in terms of?
Angie, before we do that, ਇੱਥੇ ਮੋਰੇ ਸੀਟਾਂ ਹੈਗੀਆਂ, ਇੱਥੇ ਜੇ ਕਿਸੇ ਨੇ ਬਹਿਣਾ ਇੱਥੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ ਹੈਗੀਆਂ ਸੀਟਾਂ. So on the 4th of November, as we said, Jaggi was abducted. On the 7th of November, Captain Amarinder Singh said that he had all proof against Jaggi. And we're now into 2023, and not 1 ounce of evidence has been produced. But I will take it into a little bit detail. So Jaggi was abducted in the Bagge Purana case. This is where the case is started from. And he was taken on remand. He was subject to torture, mistreatment, electric shocks, and he was made to sign blank documents. On the blank documents, he does not know what has been written because they were blank documents that he was forced to sign. On the 10th of November, Jaggi was supposed to be brought to court. He was brought to court, but despite 2 lawyers being outside of the court, the British High Commission being outside of the court, Jaggi was carried into court, and witnesses say that he could not walk. His face was covered, and we believe that this was done because what they wanted to do was to allow him the opportunity to recover from the torture. On the 14th of November, Jaggi meets Advocate Jaspal Singh Manjpur. And at that point, Paji asks him, what happened? Are you okay? And Jaggi says, "Gal ta karni a, par mainu eh dar a ki mor ke problem na pave." And Paji said, "What's happened?" He said, "Ke torture hoya wa?" He goes, "Yes." And Paji said to him, "Je tu aj nahi dasya torture hoya wa, ta mor ke teri kise ne nahi gal manni." Par oh kehanda, "Paji mor ke mainu ta utthe hi jana paina, mor ke ta na karonge." But nonetheless, Paji said, "If we don't do it now, then we're going to have a problem." So Paji asked for an independence medical examination. That did not take place. We're still challenging that within the High Court in Punjab, and that's 6 years on. We're still waiting for an outcome in respect of the independent medical examination. I was talking the other day about the Indian legal system, and I'm going to use this terminology. It's like a jalebi. The way the jalebi has these rounds in it, this is exactly what the Indian judicial system is. So Jaggi was then sent on remand, from remand to Nabha jail. Before he went to Nabha jail, the police intercepted him and took him for another case. They took him to a judge's house, because this is how India's legal system works, and they asked for his remand. The judge did not give the remand. So they went to another judge's house, and they got the remand. At this time, Paji Jaspal Singh Manjpur found out, and he followed. We went to the first house, went to the second house, and then he found out where Jaggi was. And this is, Paji Manjpur told me this, but Jaggi's wife also told us this. Paji ਕਹਿੰਦਾ ਕਿ ਮੈਂ ਗਿਆ ਉੱਥੇ, ਜੱਗੀ ਆਪਣਾ ਸਿਰ ਫੜ ਕੇ ਬੈਠਾ ਸੀ, ਇੱਕ ਡਾਰਕ ਕਮਰਾ ਸੀ, ਲਾਈਟ ਬੰਦ ਸੀ, ਤਾਂ ਜਦੋਂ ਮੈਂ ਡੋਰ ਖੁੱਲੀ ਤਾਂ ਲਾਈਟ ਪਈ, ਤਾਂ ਉੱਪਰ ਉਹਨੇ ਦੇਖਿਆ ਤੇ ਉਹ ਦੇਖ ਕੇ ਖੁਸ਼ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ। ਉਹ ਖੁਸ਼ ਹੋਇਆ ਕਿ ਭਾਜੀ ਆ। ਉਹ ਕਹਿੰਦਾ ਭਾਜੀ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਤਾਂ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਅੱਜ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਮਾਰ ਦੇਣਾ। ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਕਿਹਾ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਤੈਨੂੰ ਅਸੀਂ ਮਾਰ ਦੇਣਾ ਵਾ, ਜੋ ਤੂੰ ਅੱਗੇ ਲਿਖਦਾ ਸੀ, ਜਿਹਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਤੂੰ ਕਹਿੰਦਾ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ ਮਾਰੇ ਆ, ਇੱਦਾਂ ਹੋਣੀ ਆ। So at that point, it became like, to me, a British national has been tortured. A British national is in such a fear that he could have been killed. That's the Indian system. And the system is, if one judge doesn't give remand, they go to another judge. If that one doesn't give it, they go to the one that will do it. So he was protected as a result. Jaggi was then taken on another case in another remand, and he was treated like an animal. And when I say animal, his leg and his hand was tied to a chain. At this point, the British High Commission had went to try and see him, and they had to intervene to say, you have to take these off. Because 24 hours a day, he was chained whilst he was in this police cell. And this carried on. It didn't stop, because 10 cases he had remand against him. Each time he was being interrogated by Punjab police. So I'm going to be clear. Jaggi was tortured from the 4th till the 7th of November physically. The mental torture continues to today. And on each occasion, they were mentally torturing him because the element was there that they could still physically torture him. So those cases went from Punjab police, and then the NIA intercepted and said, we're taking these cases. ਹੁਣ ਇੱਥੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਬਜ਼ੁਰਗ ਵੀ ਬੈਠੇ ਆ, ਕਈ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਤੋਂ ਵੀ ਆਏ ਹੋਣੇ ਆ। ਪੰਜਾਬ ਪੁਲਿਸ ਵਾਲੇ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਭਾਜੀ ਮੰਝਪੁਰ ਨੂੰ ਸਾਡੇ ਗਲ ਤੋਂ ਮਰਿਆ ਸੱਪ ਲੈ ਗਿਆ ਤੇ ਅਸੀਂ NIA ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਪਾਤਾ. So what the Punjab police said was to the lawyer was that we had a dead snake around our neck. Now it's gone from our neck onto the NIA. What that, in essence, that meant was we have no evidence against Jaggi, and we are glad that this case has been moved from us to somebody else who will have to now deal with this. The other element is, if Punjab police do not find any evidence, it's unlikely anyone's going to find evidence, because at the time the house was raided, they would have planted the evidence at that time. Another element I didn't share earlier on, my dad's pua. So my dad's pua lost her husband. She had lost her son. She'd lost her daughter. She'd lost quite a lot, and my dad treated her like a mum. But she didn't survive, because when Jaggi was detained, it really got to her. She was elderly. My dad had looked after her the whole life. And the day she passed away, and it was a funeral, Punjab police raided the house again. ਕਰਕੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਕੋਈ ਸ਼ਰਮ ਹੈ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੀ ਤੇ ਉਸ ਵੇਲੇ ਫਿਰ ਰੇਡ ਕੀਤੀ ਆ. So the reason I'm sharing this element of it was my dad, who looked after his pua for majority of her life, could not even attend her funeral. And at that point, as a family, it felt really serious, because ਸਾਰੀ ਜ਼ਿੰਦਗੀ ਸੰਭਾਲ ਤਾਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕੋਸ਼ਿਸ਼ ਕੀਤੀ ਆ, ਜਦੋਂ ਆਖਰੀ ਵੇਲੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕੰਡਾ ਵੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਦੇ ਸਕਦੇ ਸੀ, ਤੇ ਇਹ ਗੱਲ ਮੁੜ ਕੇ ਆਉਂਦੀ ਹੈ ਜਦੋਂ ਕੈਪਟਨ ਨੇ ਅੱਗੇ ਕਿਹਾ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਤਰਸੋਗੇ ਕਿ ਆਪਣੇ ਦੇ ਭੋਗਾਂ 'ਤੇ ਵੀ ਪਹੁੰਚਣ ਨੂੰ. So these things now come, and I digress a little bit because I think it's important to share this element. So going back to the cases, in May 2018, a charge sheet was presented against Jaggi. And the reason that charge sheet was presented against Jaggi was because at the time we were advocating at the UN in Geneva. So the NIA, and this is a mistake that they had done, I believe, the Punjabi Chalan from the Punjab police, they translated that from Punjabi to English and gave that as the Chalan, the charge sheet for Jaggi. The mistakes, so the Bindiya and Tippiya and Punjabi, they made those exact same mistakes in English. That was the first clue, that all they did was translate the Punjabi Chalan into English. And that's what they used. But at the time, we thought, okay, now they've given this, we'll find out what the charges against him are. They thought they can quieten the campaign. But what Redress did, who are an NGO, said until the investigation of torture takes place, any evidence obtained is inadmissible. That backfired on India. ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਇੰਡੀਆ ਵਾਲੇ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਸੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਸਾਰੀ ਕੈਂਪੇਨ ਚੁੱਪ ਕਰਾ ਦੋਗੇ, ਅਸੀਂ ਚਲਾਨ ਦੇ ਦਿੱਤਾ, ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਨੇ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਕੁਛ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੋਣਾ ਵਾ ਤਾਂ ਹੀ ਚਲਾਨ ਆਇਆ ਵਾ. ਪਰ ਲੇਕਿਨ NGO ਨੇ ਕਹਿ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਗੱਲ ਇੱਦਾਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗੀ, ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਟੌਰਚਰ ਦਾ ਐਗਜ਼ਾਮੀਨੇਸ਼ਨ ਹੋਣਾ ਪੈਣਾ ਤਾਂ ਫਿਰ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕੋਈ ਕੇਸ ਚਲਾ ਸਕਦੇ ਆ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਜੇ ਟੌਰਚਰ ਹੋਇਆ ਵਾ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕੋਈ ਸਬੂਤ ਜੇ ਵੀ ਉਹਦੇ ਕੋਲੋਂ ਕੋਸ਼ਿਸ਼ ਕੀਤੀ ਲੈਣ ਨੂੰ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਵਰਤ ਨਹੀਂ ਸਕਦੇ. So May 2018, this charge sheet's been presented. The Indians have tried to take the cases from Punjab to Delhi. But we were victorious legally because there was no jurisdiction to take the cases from Punjab to Delhi. So the Indians then took the cases to the Supreme Court. In the Supreme Court, they argued that Jaggi was making a Khalistan movement from Nabha jail. He was conspiring of killing witnesses, and his life was in danger. Nabha jail is the highest security jail in Punjab. The Supreme Court at the time, it was a pro-India judge, he stayed the order. The order was stayed, which meant that you could not do anything with the case at all. So no proceedings took place. In July 2019, Jaggi's cases were transferred from Punjab to Delhi. The judge at this point didn't listen to anything that the defense had said. He took on board what the Indian authorities had said in their documents without any proof. Now, what's really important is one witness died. That one witness committed suicide. That one witness was a Chaprasi who had 5 children. He was harassed by the NIA to become a state witness, and he refused. He was harassed. He was harassed that much he gave up his life. That was one witness that had died. And that's not me saying it, that's his family. It's documented in the media. The family came out. ਉਹਦਾ ਪਰਿਵਾਰ ਕਹਿੰਦਾ ਕਿ ਇੰਨਾ ਤੰਗ ਕੀਤਾ ਗਿਆ ਸੀ ਉਹਨੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਆਪ ਨੂੰ ਖੁਦਕੁਸ਼ੀ ਕਰ ਲਈ 5 ਨਿਆਣੇ ਛੱਡ ਗਿਆ This was in the media reports of what happened. So one witness had died, but it was due to the harassment. But nonetheless, the judge moved the cases from Punjab to Delhi. So all the cases go to Delhi, and judges started fixing hearings every 6 to 8 weeks. Jaggi was formally charged on all 8 cases on September 2022. Charge Jaggi ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਲੱਗੇ ਆ ਸਤੰਬਰ 2022 ਵਿੱਚ 7 ਨਵੰਬਰ 2017 ਵਿੱਚ ਕੈਪਟਨ ਕਹਿਣ ਡਿਆ ਵਾ ਕਿ ਸਾਰੇ ਸਬੂਤ ਜੱਗੀ ਦੇ ਖਿਲਾਫ ਸਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਤੇ ਪਰ ਸਤੰਬਰ 2022 ਚ ਲੱਗੇ ਇਹਦਾ ਮਤਲਬ ਕਿ ਉਸ ਵੇਲੇ ਜੱਗੀ ਨੂੰ ਕਿਹਾ ਗਿਆ ਕਿ ਆ ਤੇਰੇ ਖਿਲਾਫ ਚਾਰਜ ਆ ਤੂੰ ਹੁਣ ਇਹਨੂੰ ਗਿਲਟੀ ਪਲੀਡ ਕਰਦਾ ਵਾ ਜਾਂ ਨੋਟ ਗਿਲਟੀ ਕਰਦਾ ਵਾ ਸੋ ਜੱਗੀ at that point said not guilty. 14 months have elapsed. 8 witnesses have been cross-examined. The Indians are alleging that we have 200 witnesses in each case. So these 200 witnesses are not against Jaggi only because there's other 10 co-accused in the cases. The first witness that they brought was from Punjab Police. And the evidence he gave, and there's a lot of youth here, and it's laughable, but it's serious. The first person that was cross-examined by the prosecution was, did you transfer the cases from Punjab Police to NIA? He said yes. And he signed off the papers. Now we know it's a fact that you've given the cases to the NIA, so obviously you've given them everything you had and passed it over. So in essence, one could say that was a postman or a courier that couriered it over, but they brought a Punjab police officer. The other 7 witnesses that they have brought are people that worked in airlines, and they have no knowledge of the individual. They have no recognition of the individual. And in some cases, the people that were called in witnesses no longer work in that company. So somebody else is coming to give evidence to say that this person no longer works in the company. These are the 8 witnesses that they have presented 6 years on. And if you calculate it, so that's 192 witnesses left, times 8. And 14 months, they've only had 8 witnesses. So you can just imagine how long the whole process is going to take in order for this case to conclude. But during this, Jaggi has been granted bail in one case. So when I talk about the jalebi, and I've deliberately now started talking about this jalebi because I told you that the Supreme Court moved the cases from Punjab to Delhi. Now, Jaggi's been granted bail from the High Court in one of the cases, but what do the Indians do? They appeal, and they go to the Supreme Court. The judge at the time, his father was the head of RSS in Punjab at some point. Without listening, he stayed the bail order. Bail order te ਉਹਨੇ stay ਲਾ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਸੀ ਉਹਦਾ ਮਤਲਬ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਬੇਲ ਦਾ ਆਰਡਰ ਪਾਸ ਕੀਤਾ ਸੀ ਹਾਈ ਕੋਰਟ ਨੂੰ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਇੰਪਲੀਮੈਂਟ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਸੀ ਤੇ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਬਾਕੀ ਕੇਸਾਂ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਪਾਂ ਬੇਲ ਲਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਸਕਦੇ ਸੀ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਜੇ ਆਪਾਂ ਬੇਲ ਲਾਉਂਦੇ ਆ ਉਹ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਸੁਪਰੀਮ ਕੋਰਟ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੇਸ ਗਿਆ ਵਾ ਸੋ 1 ਸਾਲ ਲੱਗਾ it took 1 year for the case to go to the Supreme Court. And I watched this because you can watch the Supreme Court. And we hired a really known advocate, Justice Baswant he was, but he's now an advocate. And Mr. Baswant said, "My lord, I have read the charge sheet up and down thoroughly. And at the most, my client is a courier. at the most. But he has been in prison for nearly 6 years. And the prosecution said, no, my lord, he's not been in prison for 6 years. It's been 5 years, 10 months, and 10 days. What's the difference? 6 years. The judge said, that is a long time. They said, no, and the senior lawyer came and said, no, sir, my lord, we have evidence against him, and he is involved in all of these cases. This is not the only case. They presented 2 redacted witness statements, and they gave them to the judge. The judge looked at it and said, where is the evidence here? What is this what you have? Within 8 minutes, he dismissed the Indian appeal. But this jalebi, what it did was, for 1 year, it made everything, it put it on hold. So we couldn't do anything. If we had lost that, Jaggi would not be able to get out on bail, because the highest court would then have made an order to say that he cannot be granted bail, because the high court order would have been taken back. So on the 8th of August, you may have seen a video where I have said that this is a really historic victory for us, that we now can hope that Jaggi can be out within 6 months. I'm going to take you to the 5 bail hearings that are pending. So on the 1st of November, the case was heard again. They have brought a senior Supreme Court lawyer in order to contest the bail hearings. And the judge said to him, what are you doing here? Don't you have anything better to do? To the Supreme Court lawyer. He said, you have spent 6 years and you've only brought in 8 witnesses. How is it justified for him to be staying here for this long? So this hearing is now going to take place on the 9th of November. I believe that the Indians thought that they could push this until 2024, but it hasn't, because the judge said, no, we want to do something. Now, the only reason judges make short hearings is because they want to conclude the matter. So we're hopeful on the 9th of November that he will get bail in those 5 cases, which means that he is left with 2 cases and he could be out on bail. So this is the context of how the NIA works. There is one Baghe Prana case, which is in Punjab. There's been about 114 trial hearings. A lot of the witnesses have been cross-examined. Yes, it's taken 6 years, but there's been a lot more progress in Punjab than it has been in Delhi. The reason Jaggi was taken to Delhi was because, 1, they wanted to isolate him from the family. 2, they know there's too many delays in Delhi. They cannot do day-to-day proceedings. And this is one way that they can long this out and blame the judicial system. So it goes back to this jalebi. This is the way they work. In Punjab, the Baghe Prana case, the investigating officer has said that he found no incriminating evidence. जिस केस ਵਿੱਚ ਅਗਵਾ ਕੀਤਾ ਸੀ ਬਾਗੇ ਪੁਰਾਣੇ ਵਾਲੇ ਕੇਸ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਪੁਲਿਸ ਵਾਲੇ ਨੇ ਕਿਹਾ ਵਾ ਜਿਹਨੇ ਫੜਿਆ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਜੱਗੀ ਦੇ ਖਿਲਾਫ ਕੋਈ ਸਬੂਤ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਨਹੀਂ ਲੱਭਾ ਨਾ ਸਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ ਹੈਗਾ ਹੁਣ ਇਹ ਹੈਗੀ ਉਹਦੀ ਕੇਸਾਂ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਪਰ ਹੁਣ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਜ਼ਰੂਰੀ ਹੈ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਦੱਸਣ ਨੂੰ ਕਿ what the charges are against Jaggi. So in the challan it says Jaggi went to France in 2000/2013. He gave £3,000 to Harminder Singh Mintu, I say this in brackets, who is no longer alive because he died suspiciously in April 2018. That £3,000 was given to Hardeep Singh Shera. That £3,000 was used to commit murders in Punjab, which took place in 2015-16 onwards. That Jaggi is a member of Khalistan Liberation Force. And Khalistan Liberation Force is also a terrorist organization. Now I'm going to break this down because I think it's really important. In 2012-13, Jaggi went to France, fact. So let's not deny facts because he went. Whether or not Jaggi gave £3,000 to Harminder Singh Mintu, only Jaggi knows, or now God knows. Because ਜਿਹਨੂੰ ਪੈਸੇ ਦਿੱਤੇ ਸੀ ਉਹ ਤਾਂ ਜ਼ਿੰਦਗੀ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੈ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੁਣ. He suspiciously died in April 2018, and there's allegations that he was killed whilst he was in Nubba jail at the time. £3,000, 2013, let's take it, that's when he gave it at the highest. And the first murder took place, let's say, in 2015. They're saying that with that £3,000, 7 murders took place with that £3,000. So they need to prove that. They haven't done so to date. Khalistan Liberation Force, even if Jaggi is a member, was not a banned organization. They became a banned organization in 2018. And the reason they made it a banned organization to say that Jaggi was a part of a terrorist organization. So if you look at the facts and like what I've broken down to you, you can easily see that this is what they're saying that's against Jaggi, and there's nothing. So to date, they've not provided any evidence against Jaggi, they've not provided any proof. But the reason Jaggi had the charges placed against him was because the Indians are claiming that they have 2 witnesses against Jaggi. We don't know who they are. And India also has a habit of having stock witnesses. Stock witnesses are that they use individual people in certain cases and they bring them routinely. But these stock witnesses get caught out because there's somebody that has a list, because these stock witnesses are the ones they keep using. And I've read the redacted statements, and at the highest, there's nothing in there to say Jaggi committed any of these offences. So that's it in respect of the charges of where we're at. None of the evidence has been provided. And Bhagya Prana case is ongoing. That should probably conclude early next year. But during this process, there was one Punjab police case in Faridkot that Jaggi nu baizat bari kita gaya si court wallo, because the Indians are using those same points that I just said in each one of the cases. The only difference in the NIA cases is that a murders took place or there's an attempted murder, but it's the exact same allegations against Jaggi throughout. Now, there's another aspect. The case I talked about that Jaggi has got bail in is a case of Amit Arora. So if any of you guys want to Google Amit Arora, you can. Amit Arora was accused by Punjab police of instigating an attack on himself in order to get Z security. ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਅਮਿਤ ਅਰੋੜਾ ਸੀ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਪੁਲਿਸ ਵਾਲਿਆਂ ਨੇ ਉਹਦੇ ਉੱਪਰ ਚਲਾਨ ਤਾਂ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਚਾਰਜ ਕੀਤਾ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਇਹਨੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਆਪ 'ਤੇ ਅਟੈਕ ਕਰਵਾ ਕੇ ਕਿ ਇਹਨੂੰ ਸਿਕਿਉਰਿਟੀ ਚਾਹੀਦੀ ਸੀ, ਉਹ RSS ਦਾ ਮੈਂਬਰ। ਹੁਣ ਜਦੋਂ ਜੱਗੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਫੜਿਆ ਵਾ, ਉਹ ਕੇਸ ਵੀ ਜੱਗੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਉੱਤੇ ਪਾ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਕਿ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਇਹਦੇ ਉੱਪਰ ਅਟੈਂਪਟਡ ਮਰਡਰ ਕਰਨ ਦੀ ਕੋਸ਼ਿਸ਼ ਕੀਤੀ ਆ। ਹੁਣ ਕਿੱਧਰ ਨੂੰ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਚੱਲੋਗੇ? ਇੱਕ ਪਾਸੇ ਉਹਦੇ ਉੱਪਰ ਕੇਸ ਪਾਇਆ ਕਿ ਉਹਨੇ ਝੂਠਾ ਆਪਣੇ ਆਪ ਨੇ ਮੁਕਾਬਲਾ ਕੀਤਾ, ਦੂਸਰੇ ਪਾਸੇ ਤੋਂ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਆ ਕਿ ਹੁਣ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਉਹਦੀ ਕੋਸ਼ਿਸ਼ ਕੀਤੀ ਮਾਰਨ ਨੂੰ। ਸੋ ਇਹ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕੀਤੀਆਂ ਵਾ ਚੇਂਜ ਕਰੀ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਆ। ਅਤੇ ਫਿਰ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਜਦੋਂ ਮੈਂ ਕਹਿੰਦਾ ਹਾਸਾ ਆਉਂਦਾ, ਇਹ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ ਸਾਰੇ ਸਬੂਤ ਆ ਜੱਗੀ ਦੇ ਖਿਲਾਫ ਕਿ ਉਹਨੇ ਪੈਸੇ ਘੱਲੇ, ਬੈਂਕ ਸਟੇਟਮੈਂਟਾਂ ਵਾ। ਹੁਣ ਉਹ ਵੀ ਹੈ ਨਹੀਂ। ਇਹ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ ਈਮੇਲਸ ਆ ਕਿ ਜੱਗੀ ਘੱਲਣ ਡਿਆ ਸੀ। ਅਤੇ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਹਾਸੇ ਵਾਲੀ ਗੱਲ ਇਹ ਆ, ਫਿਰ ਨਿਊਜ਼ਪੇਪਰ ਨੇ ਈਮੇਲ ਐਡਰੈਸ ਪ੍ਰਿੰਟ ਕਰਤਾ। ਅਤੇ ਉਹ ਈਮੇਲ ਐਡਰੈਸ ਮੇਰਾ ਆਪਣਾ ਈਮੇਲ ਐਡਰੈਸ ਸੀ, ਜੱਗੀ ਦਾ ਨਹੀਂ, ਮੇਰਾ ਸੀ। WSO ਵਾਲਿਆਂ ਨੇ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਇੱਕ ਟੈਕਟ ਘੱਲੀ ਸੀ ਉਸ ਈਮੇਲ ਐਡਰੈਸ 'ਤੇ। ਹੁਣ ਜਦੋਂ ਮੈਂ ਆਇਆ ਵਾ, ਉਹੋ ਹੀ ਈਮੇਲ ਐਡਰੈਸ ਆ, ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਹੁਣ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਪੁੱਛ ਸਕਦੇ ਆ। ਪਰ ਮਤਲਬ ਇਹ ਆ ਕਿ ਇੱਦਾਂ ਦੇ ਕੰਮ ਕਰ ਦਿੰਦੇ ਆ ਇੰਡੀਆ ਵਾਲੇ, ਨਾ ਕੋਈ ਸਬੂਤ ਦਿੰਦੇ ਆ। ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਚੇਂਜ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ। ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਉਹ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਜੱਗੀ ਨੇ ਖੂਨ ਆਪ ਕੀਤਾ, ਫਿਰ ਉਹ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਫਾਈਨਾਂਸਰ ਆ, ਫਿਰ ਉਹ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਆ ਕਿ ਮਾਸਟਰ ਮਾਈਂਡ ਆ, ਅਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਇਹ ਵੀ ਕਿਹਾ ਵਾ ਕਿ ਮੈਂ ਵੀ ਮਾਸਟਰ ਮਾਈਂਡ ਆ ਇਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ। ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਜਦੋਂ ਆਪਣੀ ਕੈਂਪੇਨ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਹੋਈ ਸੀ, ਉਦੋਂ ਇਹ ਆਪਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਚੁੱਪ ਕਰਾਉਣਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਸੀ। ਅਤੇ ਕੈਪਟਨ ਨੇ ਕਿਹਾ ਸੀ ਉਸ ਵੇਲੇ, ਇੱਕ ਪਰਿਵਾਰ ਐਵੇਂ ਰੌਲਾ ਪਾਈ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਵਾ ਅਤੇ ਦੂਸਰਾ ਪਰਿਵਾਰ ਖਾਲਿਸਤਾਨ ਮੂਵਮੈਂਟ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਪੈਸੇ ਇਕੱਠੇ ਕਰੀ ਜਾਂਦਾ। ਸ਼ਾਇਦ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਚੇਤਾ ਹੋਊਗਾ ਉਸ ਵੇਲੇ ਦੁਨੀਆ ਭਰ ਤੱਕ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਨੇ ਕਿਹਾ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਜੱਗੀ ਲਈ ਆਪਾਂ ਕੀ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਆ, ਪੈਸੇ ਜੋ ਮਰਜ਼ੀ। ਅਤੇ ਉਸ ਵੇਲੇ ਇਹ ਅਸੀਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਬੈਗ ਭਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਸੰਗਤ ਦੇਣ ਨੂੰ ਤਿਆਰ ਸੀ। ਪਰ ਮੇਰੀ ਹੱਥ ਜੋੜ ਕੇ ਉਸ ਵੇਲੇ ਬੇਨਤੀ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਇਸ ਵੇਲੇ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਲੋੜ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗੀ ਤਾਂ ਜਦੋਂ ਲੋੜ ਹੋਊਗੀ ਮੈਂ ਆਪ ਬੇਨਤੀ ਕਰੂੰਗਾ। ਤਾਂ ਜੋ ਵੀ ਉਹ ਇੰਡੀਆ ਵਾਲੇ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਸੀ ਉਲਟ ਪਈ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਸੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਉੱਤੇ। ਸੋ ਇਹ ਹੈਗੇ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਤੱਕ ਆਪਾਂ ਅੱਜ ਪਹੁੰਚੇ ਆ, ਪਰ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਉਮੀਦ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ ਕਿ 9 ਨਵੰਬਰ ਨੂੰ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਸੁਪਰੀਮ ਕੋਰਟ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਪਾਂ ਜਿੱਤ ਕੀਤੀ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਉਹਦੇ ਰਾਹੀਂ ਬੇਲ ਮਿਲੂਗੀ। ਅਤੇ ਅਗਲੇ ਮੇਰੀ ਸੋਚ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ ਕਿ ਵਿਸਾਖੀ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲੋਂ ਜੱਗੀ ਬੇਲ 'ਤੇ ਬਾਹਰ ਆ ਸਕਦਾ ਵਾ। ਇਹ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਿ ਮੁੜ ਕੇ UK ਆ ਸਕਦਾ ਵਾ, ਪਰ ਬੇਲ 'ਤੇ ਘੱਟ ਤੋਂ ਘੱਟ ਜੇਲ੍ਹ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਹਰ ਆ ਸਕਦਾ।
Thank you, Virji. In September of 2023, Prime Minister Trudeau made what we know to be a historic announcement in Parliament, providing or alleging that Bhai Sahib Nijjar's death in Surrey they have credible allegations and evidence that demonstrates India had a hand in Mr. Nijjar's death. For Canadians, and for Sikh Canadians in particular, that statement shook the ground that they stood on. What I want to understand is, what have British officials been saying, and what actions have they been taking in Jaggi's case? Has that changed since the revelations of Mr. Nijjar's death and India's potential hand that the allegations point at?
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Panji, first of all, what I want to say is what Justin Trudeau said. We've known this, Danish Paji said this earlier on. We've known this from day one this happens. But it took the Western world for Trudeau to say that, to validate what we already knew. We've been advocating, we've been saying this has been taking place. WSO have been doing hard work on this. The Nojwans have been doing a lot of work. And I say that because in the last week with WSO, I've personally seen how much effort they're putting. I've personally seen, because I had not met any of the WSO members in person. I had communicated with one WSO member, but I've personally seen the work that they have been doing in the last week. So this is what you guys have been raising from the outset, that this interference takes place. And the reason I'm starting at that point is because ਆਪਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਤਾਂ ਪਤਾ ਸੀ ਇਹ ਕੰਮ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਆ। ਜਰਮਨੀ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੋਇਆ ਵਾ। ਜਰਮਨੀ ਵਿੱਚ 2 ਬੰਦੇ ਫੜੇ ਗਏ, ਮੀਆਂ ਬੀਬੀ, ਜਿਹੜੇ ਗੁਰੂ ਘਰ ਵਿੱਚ ਸਪਾਈ ਕਰਨ ਡਏ ਸੀ ਅਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਸਜ਼ਾ ਹੋਈ। ਸੋ ਇਹ ਕੰਮ ਤਾਂ ਆਪਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਪਤਾ ਵਾ, ਜਦੋਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਲੋਕ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਆਉਂਦੇ ਆ, ਆਪਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਤੋੜਨਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਆ, ਇਹ ਕੰਮ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਆ। ਪਰ ਜਦੋਂ ਆਪਾਂ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਆਪਣੀ ਗੱਲ ਕੋਈ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੁਣਦਾ। ਜਦੋਂ ਹੁਣ ਇੰਟੈਲੀਜੈਂਸ ਏਜੰਸੀ ਕਹਿਣ ਡਈ ਹੈ ਕੰਮ ਹੋਣ ਡਿਆ ਵਾ, ਹੁਣ ਸਾਰੀ ਦੁਨੀਆ ਭੱਕ ਸੁਣ ਡਈ ਆ। ਸੋ ਆਈ ਥਿੰਕ ਇੰਪੋਰਟੈਂਟ ਇਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚੋਂ ਇਹ ਚੀਜ਼ ਆ। ਹੁਣ ਮੈਂ ਪ੍ਰਧਾਨ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਨੀ ਆ। ਪ੍ਰਧਾਨ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਨੇ ਅੱਜ ਕਿਹਾ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਜ਼ਰੂਰੀ ਆ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਸਪੋਰਟ ਕਰੋ, ਅਤੇ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਪੋਰਟ ਕਰੋਗੇ ਇਹ ਅੱਗੇ ਵੀ ਇਹ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਆਉਂਗੇ। ਸੋ ਬਿਫੋਰ ਆਈ ਗੋ ਐਂਡ ਔਨ ਬ੍ਰਿਟਿਸ਼ ਸਾਈਡ, ਆਈ ਥਿੰਕ ਇਜ਼ ਰੀਅਲੀ ਇੰਪੋਰਟੈਂਟ, ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਇਸ ਮੁਲਕ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਨੇ ਟ੍ਰੀਟੀ ਸਾਈਨ ਕੀਤੀ ਆ 2018 ਵਿੱਚ ਇੰਡੀਆ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ। ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ ਸ਼ੇਅਰਿੰਗ ਆਫ ਇੰਟੈਲੀਜੈਂਸ। ਇਹ ਬਹੁਤ ਜ਼ਰੂਰੀ ਆ ਕਿ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਰਿਟਰੈਕਟ ਕੀਤਾ ਜਾਵੇ, ਨਹੀਂ ਤਾਂ ਅੱਜ ਦਾਸ ਬੈਠਾ ਵਾ ਜੱਗੀ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਨ ਨੂੰ, ਕੱਲ੍ਹ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਇੱਥੇ ਬੈਠੇ ਹੋ ਸਕਦੇ ਆ ਕਿਸੇ ਹੋਰ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਦੇ, ਕਿ ਇਹ ਕੋਈ ਵੀ ਹੋ ਸਕਦਾ ਇਸ ਕਮਰੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਕੰਮ ਹੋ ਸਕਦਾ ਉਹਦੇ ਖਿਲਾਫ। ਸੋ ਇਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਜ਼ਰੂਰੀ ਆ WSO ਵਾਲਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ, ਜਿਹੜੇ ਵੀ ਸਪੋਰਟ ਇਹਨੂੰ ਰੋਕਣ ਦੀ ਕੋਸ਼ਿਸ਼ ਕਰਦੇ ਕਰੋ, ਬਿਕੋਜ਼ ਇਫ ਵੀ ਕੀਪ ਸ਼ੇਅਰਿੰਗ ਦਿਸ ਇਨਫੋਰਮੇਸ਼ਨ then we're going to have problems. But the Indians have won, because at the start of this whole topic is oppression. And this is what the Indian state want. They want to oppress us, to stop us talking about human rights violations. That's what we can't do. So the reason I'm saying this, because of the experience we've had for the last 6 years, it's not easy. But it's important for you guys. ਮੈਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਚਾਹੁੰਦਾ ਕਿ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਵਿੱਚੋਂ ਕੋਈ ਵੀ ਜੱਗੀ ਹੋਵੇ। ਮੈਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਚਾਹੁੰਦਾ ਕਿ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਕੋਈ ਵੀ ਵਿੱਚੋਂ ਨਿਆਣਾ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਉਹ ਨਿਆਣਾ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਵੀ ਮੇਰਾ ਵੀ ਆ। ਮੇਰੇ ਵੀ ਭੈਣ ਭਰਾ ਹੋ ਸਕਦਾ ਹੋ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਾਡਾ ਪਰਿਵਾਰ ਬਣੇ ਆ ਅਸੀਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਕਿ ਜੋ ਜੱਗੀ ਨਾਲ ਹੋਇਆ ਉਹ ਅੱਗੇ ਕਿਸੇ ਨਾਲ ਹੋਵੇ ਸੋ ਇਟਸ ਰੀਲੀ ਇੰਪੋਰਟੈਂਟ that we put pressure on the MPs you guys do to retract that I have met leaders of the parties as a result of being the keynote speaker and I said this during that period in Ottawa that it's really important that this is retracted because if it's not it's going to be a danger to Canadian citizens. So it's really important. I've met leaders, I've met deputy leaders, and some of them belong to the Sikh community. We need to hold them to account. Because ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਫਰਜ਼ ਬਣਦਾ ਜੇ ਆਪਣੀ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚੋਂ ਆ ਕਿ ਆਪਣੀ ਉਹ ਪ੍ਰੋਟੈਕਸ਼ਨ ਕਰਨ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਨਹੀਂ ਤਾਂ ਇਹ ਕੰਮ ਹੋਰ ਹੋਣੇ ਆ ਸੋ my benti to everyone here is hold your MPs to account so that we don't have another Jaggi. Jaggi's suffered what he has suffered because that's his seva, but we don't want anybody else to suffer that. So that's what I wanted to start off with, Benji.
No, I appreciate it very much. I think it's an important message to share with everyone.
So the British government haven't been supporting. So the British government's line they have been supporting the family. I say they haven't. Jaggi's wife came to the UK in April 2019. She was meeting the Foreign Secretary at the time, and Jaggi's cases were transferred to Delhi. So Jaggi said, don't send her back. As a result, I made an application, and a paid application with the right ways. The Home Office refused the application. So we appealed the application. The refusal, sorry, and we won. The Home Office appealed it again, and we won. The Home Office appealed it again, and now Benji introduced me earlier on as an immigration solicitor. I have colleagues. The only reason somebody would go to the Court of Session in Scotland for an appeal is if you have committed serious offences such as rape, paedophilia, or murders. Because if you're a non-British national, what the Secretary of State does not want is to allow you to be in the community and you commit another murder. And if you do, their job can be at risk. So they want to do everything possible to say, we have tried to remove this person. But Jaggi de ghar wale ne ki kita? ਕੁਛ ਵੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਤੇ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਕਿਉਂ ਇੱਥੇ ਤੱਕ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਗਏ ਕਿ ਕੋਸ਼ਿਸ਼ ਕੀਤੀ to return her back to India. But it was the biggest slap for UK and India because UK have declared India a safe country. So when somebody claims asylum, they say that you can go to another part of India and you can stay there. Because India is so big, unless the state are after you, then you have an issue of being able to go to another country. Jaggi's wife was granted humanitarian protection within the UK. So that was a big slap in the UK's face and Indians' face. And earlier on, when I said कि मेरी देन भी हैगी है जग्गी नूं कि मैं अज वकील बनिया वां ਜਿਹੜੀ ਮੇਰੀ ਗਵਾਹੀ ਸੀ ਕੋਰਟ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਸ ਵੇਲੇ ਜੱਗੀ ਦੇ ਵਾਈਫ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਇੱਕ ਤਾਂ ਜੱਗੀ ਦੇ ਬ੍ਰਦਰ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਸੀ ਤੇ ਦੂਸਰਾ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਮੈਂ ਆਪ ਖੁਦ ਵਕੀਲ ਆ ਮੈਂ ਆਪ ਖੁਦ ਉਸ ਕੋਰਟ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਵਾ ਹੈਲਪ ਕਰਨ ਨੂੰ ਜਿਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਕੇਸ ਰਿਫਿਊਜ਼ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਆ ਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਰਿਪਰੈਜ਼ੈਂਟ ਕਰਨ ਨੂੰ ਜਾਂ ਤਾਂ ਜੱਜ ਨੂੰ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਪੈਣਾ ਸੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਮੇਰੀ ਗਵਾਹੀ ਆ ਉਹ ਝੂਠੀ ਆ ਜਾਂ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਪੈਣਾ ਸੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਮੇਰੀ ਗਵਾਹੀ ਆ ਉਹ ਸੱਚੀ ਆ ਤੇ ਇਸ ਕਾਰਨ ਜੱਗੀ ਦੀ ਵਾਈਫ ਦਾ ਕੇਸ ਲੱਗਣਾ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ ਵਾ ਇਹ ਇੰਪੋਰਟੈਂਟ ਗੱਲ ਮੈਂ ਤਾਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਸ਼ੇਅਰ ਕਰਦਾ ਜੇ ਮੈਂ ਨਾ ਜੱਗੀ ਉਹਨੇ ਕਹਿ ਦਿੰਦੇ ਤੂੰ ਜਾ ਡੈਡੀ ਨਾਲ ਕੰਮ ਕਰ ਤੇ ਤੂੰ ਨਾ ਵਕੀਲ ਬਣ ਤੂੰ ਨਾ ਪੜ੍ਹਾਈ ਕਰ ਉਸ ਵੇਲੇ ਮੈਂ ਤਾਂ ਪੜ੍ਹਾਈ ਉੱਧਰ ਨੂੰ ਜਾਣਾ ਸੀ ਪਰ ਵਕੀਲ ਬਣਿਆ ਤੇ ਇਹ ਚੀਜ਼ ਮੁੜ ਕੇ ਇੰਪੋਰਟੈਂਟ ਹੋਈ ਹੈ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਜਦੋਂ ਗਵਾਹੀ ਦੇਣੀ ਸੀ ਵਕੀਲ ਦੀ ਵੀ ਅਹਿਮੀਅਤ ਆਈ ਵਿੱਚ ਬਿਕਾਜ਼ ਵੈਨ ਯੂਰ ਅ solicitor you have that credibility. Either the judge would have had to say that Mr. Johal is not credible and I do not take his witness statement, or he would have had to say, I find him credible, which he did. And as a result, Jaggi's wife's appeal was allowed. So it was touch and go. If I wasn't a solicitor, I genuinely believe that appeal may have been refused. So that's the impact of the UK government trying to remove Jaggi's wife from the UK. So on one side, the UK government are saying we are supporting Mr. Johal and his family. This is the support. They're trying to remove his wife. In terms of Jaggi, otherwise with the British government, what's happening is they have a policy. If somebody is arbitrarily detained, they call for the release. They rightfully so did for Nazdeen Zaghari Ratcliffe in Iran, but they haven't done that for Jaggi. Iran has not good relationships with most countries around the world. But apparently India and UK are best friends. So quite easily, they could be adopting that policy to call for Jaggi's release, but they haven't done so. Now I'm going to go one step back, what arbitrary detention is. And it's going to tie in about this validation point I made about Justin Trudeau. We have been saying as a community, Jaggi's family, that Jaggi's innocent, he was abducted, he's been falsely implicated, and the result is because of Jaggi's activism. So we had made submissions to the UN Working Group of Arbitrary Detention. The UN Working Group of Arbitrary Detention declared, 1, Jaggi was abducted, he wasn't arrested. 2, there's no legal basis for Jaggi's detention. And 3, Jaggi has been detained as a result of documenting the human rights violations that took place in 1984. It goes back down to validation again. Jaggi was called a Scottish Sikh through the media. As soon as this UN opinion came out, all of a sudden now Jaggi is a British Sikh. That's the kind of change this validation made. But what the UK government have done, have failed to call for Jaggi's release in line with their own policy. So what Justin Trudeau has done, you've got to commend him for that, because he stood up for a citizen who was assassinated on his soil, whereas the UK government have failed in that respect. I met the Foreign Secretary in January 2023. I said to the Foreign Secretary that this is what the UN Working Group have said. Can you either tell me you agree or you don't agree? I asked him a question. I said, if you want, we can keep it between these 4 doors if you're trying to get his release, and I will not share that anywhere if you're trying to bring him home. But if you're not going to call for his release, then I want you to write to me and detail me exactly why. That meeting was the worst meeting that I have had in the past 5 and a bit years at that time. And I've shared this with Sangat across Canada when I've been speaking. I had another event that I had to attend that night after the Foreign Secretary meeting. I attended that, and I was staying in London. I was walking back from London Bridge, and my head was really spinning because of the Foreign Secretary's meeting. Then I was speaking in front of other members of Parliament, and that day, I really felt like jumping off London Bridge, because I felt that we went back to November 2017. So I switched off my phone, Jaggi's wife's phoning, my wife's phoning, meeting with Jaggi, where I just didn't know what to do. I didn't have an answer. So I went back to the hotel where I was staying in. I know I have a meeting with the opposition leader, the Labour Party leader, the next day. So I just went back, went to sleep, woke up in the morning and thought, "Je hun main nahi karunga, hor kaun karunga." And straight away we've started with the opposition leader, who has then also called for the UK government to bring Jaggi back home. They've also said that we're willing to do whatever's possible to bring Jaggi back home, and we're willing to coordinate to work with you. So the impact of the British government has been minimal. Hand on heart, I believe our campaign has been more successful than this government. The Indian state replied to this campaign as opposed to the UK government. That's activism. So I know Benji asked the question about activism and I goalmold the girl earlier on, but that's why, because that's what activism is. Nazanin Gary Radcliffe's husband, Richard Radcliffe, I speak to him, and they are shocked that our community, 6 years on, is still following Jaggi. They still want Jaggi to come back home. That's activism. That's what's in our blood. And this is what's holding the UK government to account. UK are meeting Jaggi every 6 to 8 weeks. Other nationals, they're not meeting them for 6 months, even a year. But the only reason they're meeting is because the continued pressure that we have put on the UK government. It wasn't the UK government that got the decision from the UN Working Group opinion, it was us. It's us that are saying to the UK government, this is where you're failing. It's us that are doing everything. And the biggest example of that was in September 2023, when Rishi Sunak went to India. The British media, for the first time, asked the question, are you calling for the release of Jagtar Singh Johal? The British Prime Minister is on a plane to India with so many journalists, and now this question is being asked. That's activism. It's taken us 6 years to get to that stage, but that's activism. That resulted in ਬੇਸ਼ਰਮੀ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਜੱਗੀ ਦਾ ਕੇਸ ਰੇਜ਼ ਕਰਨਾ ਪਿਆ ਮੋਦੀ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ. Raising means nothing, but he had to, because then he had to come back and answer the question, did you or did you not? But the question wasn't, did you raise the case? The question was, did you call for Jagtar Singh Johal's release? So there's a big difference. When Rishi Sunak came back to the UK government, the Foreign Affairs Committee, Alicia Cairns, the MP, she had taken evidence from myself, and they have found that you need to be protecting your citizens and you need to be calling for their release when they're arbitrarily detained. She is a member of the government party. So they are in power. And she asked Rishi Sunak, will you now be calling for the release of Jagtar Singh Johal? So this is the impact that we have had. Yes, they have let us down big time, but that doesn't mean we stop, because it goes back down to oppression. India wants us to stop advocating. UK government wants us to stop talking. And if I'm being honest, right now, the best thing that could happen for the UK government would be for me to die, because that's the only way I'm going to stop. Otherwise, I'm going to keep advocating, and we're going to make sure it doesn't happen to anybody else, because we don't want that. And I'll go back to the earlier point, was you have made yourselves my family. So we have an obligation to protect our family. So the UK government have failed us. They continue to fail us, but the wording has changed in their communications, because they're now saying we're looking for a resolution for the first time, which you can just think about yourself. A resolution means they want this come to an end, and we're hopeful that we'll get to that stage. But again, I'm going to go back to Maharaj, because I've not said Maharaj for a while. ਜੱਗੀ ਦਾ ਦਾਣਾ ਪਾਣੀ ਜਿੱਦਣ ਮੁੱਕ ਗਿਆ ਜੇਲ੍ਹ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਹਨੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਕੋਲ ਆ ਜਾਣਾ ਜਿੱਦਣ ਉਹਦਾ ਮੁੱਕਿਆ ਪਰ ਜਿੰਨਾ ਚਿਰ ਉਹਦਾ ਦਾਣਾ ਪਾਣੀ ਲਿਖਿਆ ਵਾ ਉਸ ਜੇਲ੍ਹ ਵਿੱਚ ਉੱਥੇ ਹੋਣਾ ਵਾ ਇਹ ਮਹਾਰਾਜ 'ਤੇ ਭਰੋਸਾ ਵਾ ਮੇਰਾ ਦਾਣਾ ਪਾਣੀ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਵਿੱਚ ਲਿਖਿਆ ਸੀ ਸਾਰੇ ਹਫ਼ਤੇ ਤਾਂ ਮੈਂ ਇੱਥੇ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਪਹੁੰਚ ਗਿਆ ਨਹੀਂ ਤਾਂ ਮੈਂ ਵੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਆਉਣਾ ਸੀ I wouldn't have been in Canada if Jaggi was back out straight away last year, but I was supposed to come here and speak in front of you. So again, we have the Bharosa and Maharaj that Jaggi will come back. So, and to tie this round, the UK government have failed us. They continue to fail us, but that doesn't stop us, because we have to continue fighting to bring Jaggi back home. And another point before Benji asks me, Jaggi's activism continues. We started a charity called Sikh Legal Assistance Board. And since the charity was started, because Jaggi said, you're doing my legal representation, but there's thousands in here that have no legal representation. And they're also our brothers and sisters that have no legal representation. Since 2018 to present, we have got 80 to 90 people either acquitted, on bail, or discharged from cases. ਤੇ ਜੇ ਜੱਗੀ ਪਹਿਲੋਂ ਹੀ ਆ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਵਾਪਸ ਤਾਂ ਉਹ ਜਿਹੜੇ 80-90 ਜਾਣੇ ਕਢਵਾਏ ਆ ਉਹ ਵੀ ਜੇਲ੍ਹ 'ਚ ਬੈਠੇ ਹੋਣੇ ਸੀ. So it started with Never Forget 84. It's now gone on to Sikh Legal Assistance Board. And I was talking to Nojwans. I did a program with Bhai Sahab that's in here as well. And Nojwan said to me, "Tusi kidda de bhra wa?" In a good way, not in a bad way. Ek jail ch baitha wa. ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਫੇਰ ਵੀ ਫਿਕਰ ਆ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਨੌਜਵਾਨ ਜੇਲ੍ਹਾਂ ਵਿੱਚ ਬੈਠੇ ਆ ਉਹਦੀ ਕੋਈ ਪੈਰਵਾਈ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਰਦਾ. nobody is helping them. ਦੂਜਾ ਉਹਦੀ ਆਪਣੇ ਭਰਾ ਦੀ ਕੋਸ਼ਿਸ਼ ਕਰਨ ਡਿਆ ਕੱਢਣ ਨੂੰ ਪਰ ਦੂਜਿਆਂ ਦਾ ਵੀ ਸੋਚਣ ਡਏ ਆ ਕਿ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਆਪਾਂ ਕਢਾਈਏ. To get 80 to 90 people out in the last 5 years from this jalebi system is not easy, but it's been done. So now I'll take you to Benji.
I thank you for pointing out that Trudeau's statement validated what so many of us know and what we've known for all of our lives. But prior to that statement, like you said, that we've known it, but we needed someone on the outside to highlight it. And in the context of the question, why should Canadians in particular, but also why should Sikh Canadians care? What parallels do you see prior to that statement taking place between the relationship that UK had with India and the relationship that Canada was seeking with India as well, that worries you, that creates this atmosphere in which Sikh activists, or for that matter, any activists, may not be safe? I'm particularly looking at, you mentioned the information sharing agreement, but are there other elements that you believe has, I guess, bolstered India's confidence in its ability to act with impunity in respect to not just arbitrary detention, but also assassinations of national citizens on their own national soil, as was the case with Mr. Najjar and others?
But I think, Benji, the element is the Indians have always thought they were powerful. And by us stopping the activism, the short answer is we've given in. So we have to continue being active. And I said this in the very first conference that we had, which was, I could walk across the road, or any one of us could walk across the road and be hit by a bus, and we're gone. It's possible, but we have done nothing in our life. So would you rather go knowing you were able to do something, or do you want to just have that life and saying, I just let the world watch, I just let everybody pass away, I let everything go because I was so scared? And that's what the Indian state want. And that's what I fear that is going to happen if we give in to what's taking place. So the request is, my request is going to be simple, is we can't stop, it's in our blood. If I said I'm not going to advocate for my brother, your son, then who else was going to do it? Nobody else was going to get up and say, "Chal theek hai, Jaggi ne bhra ne ta ਉਹਨੂੰ ਛੱਡ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਤਾਂ ਮੈਂ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਕਰ ਦਿੰਦਾ ਵਾ." If you can't do it yourself, then how can you rely on others? And I'm going to use the example of the WSO, the volunteers. Danish, the Pradhan, must have been a little bit confused by not paying people. That's why he was asked the question, are we now going to be paid? But at the end of the day, people are volunteering to do this seva. They're volunteering to make sure that the community is not affected. So let's not give in to the Indians. Let's not be what they want us to do. Let's be stronger. Let's hold our heads high and say, we're better than that. And the reason I'm going to say this now is there was a time our elders have taken 84 forward for so many years. There's a time the elders did that without any education. They just did it with their experience. But now what we have is we have experts, we have lawyers, we have accountants. I think that's all WSO has, isn't it? But we have that. Now, what we need is the Bajorgs to give us their experience, to allow us to implement, to challenge the Indian state. And we are doing that. We are being successful with doing that because, you know, the videos that were shown, it says Waru Sikh organization earlier on. That was Naujawans holding the Indian state to account with what happened. So that's why we need to continue doing that.
With that, I think you've answered my last question as to, you know, the message to be taken away today. And I think it's that activism can't stop. The activism is what continues to irritate, I think, the Indian narrative and the Indian state. And it's what we're successful at as a community that maybe on the global stage is something of a minority, but I think our voices have proven quite powerful. And Gurpreet Virji has certainly demonstrated his and his brothers are a guiding light in that, and an example of what we each can take with us as Sikh activists. With that, I think, why don't we open up the...
I think, if you don't mind, Panji, it's just another element. So
Yeah.
the Free Jaggi Now campaign in September 2018, 5 Singhs' houses were raided. And they were raided whilst Punjab police came to the UK. They were looking for banned information in India, not UK, and Punjab police were within those households. Those 5 Naujawans were a part of the Free Jaggi Now campaign, and one of them, I'm going to say his name, Deepa Singh from Sikh Youth UK. And Deepa Singh from Sikh Youth UK is actively involved in talking about the grooming that takes place, standing up for our sisters, because we can't watch our sisters going in the wrong direction, being violated. Deepa Singh is also someone is very active on social media. When the Free Jaggi Now campaign started, Deepa Singh was highly involved, continues to be highly involved, to making sure that Jaggi's voice was everywhere. And as a result, I know when I looked at my Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, that Jaggi was everywhere. It was British national has been detained, British nationals have been detained. So the UK government wanted to suppress him. As a result, the Charity Commission took a case against him and his sister. And for 3 years, that case has been pending. So what the Indian state is continuing to do is suppress our human rights activism by putting cases on them. And the UK are complicit with this in UK. And that's a big concern, because those 5 Singhs were just advocating, but they didn't stop. They're continuing. And I think most Naujawan here would know about Sikh Youth UK because they're highly active within the circles. That's those 5 things. Now, you may have also heard about the West Midlands 3. The West Midlands 3 are free British born and bred nationals. The Indians asked for their extradition, and Priti Patel signed that extradition. In the middle of the morning, I think it was around about 5 o'clock, 5:30 in the morning, 3 of their houses were broken down into. And the police took these 3 individuals to the court. Now, Naujawans found out, including Deepa Singh from Sikh Youth UK, and he informed the community this is what's happened. And Naujawans went behind these 3 youth. The judge, now one of the youth had health conditions. The judge set the bail for the one with the health conditions, £50,000. The other two's bail was in the region of £100,000 and £150,000 each. You've just been ransacked in the middle of the morning. Bail is being set at £50,000 and £150,000. Where are you going to get that money from? The community got together and got those 3 Naujawans out. if they hadn't, these Nojwans would have been in British jails awaiting the decision of this extradition. It took about 8 months for it to go to court. The community, again, was outside the court, and the security guard was saying, we've had celebrities come here that have been charged, and we've never seen this kind of reaction. But there was a community from all over the place that were outside at the time. Within 8 minutes, the prosecution dropped the case. 8 minutes. But they put those 3 individuals' life in misery for 8 months. And if they hadn't been granted bail at that point, they would have been in a jail for that whole process. So I think the element is that Britain has been complicit. They sign off documents. They allow these individuals to, and again, this is just a way of suppressing activism. So I think it's really important, because you guys may have not known about the West Midlands 3, and now you're aware of them. You may have not known about Deepa Singh. You are aware. I'm finding out about things once I'm here. And also, that's these cases. Now, Jagtar Singh Johal, you have heard about as well, and I'm hoping so. Because if not, he was the son of Shahid Bhai Kukrana. Shahid Bhai Kukrana gave his life for the Qawm. And Khanda came to the UK, and he gave his life for the Qawm. Bibi Charanjit Kaur, Jagtar Singh Khanda's mum, lost her husband at a young age, and she wasn't given her husband's body. Bibi Charanjit Kaur wasn't allowed to attend her son's funeral, her only son. That's the sacrifice that she has given. And that goes back to Benji's earlier question about activism. Where does it come from? She has no one else. She has a daughter, but she's given her husband and the son for this Qawm. And when I started off Panam Shaheed Danu, the reason was we remember sometimes the Shaheeds, but we forget their families. Bibi Charanjit Kaur is also our mother. And we have a responsibility to look after Bibi Charanjit Kaur and the others that have not been looked after. So I think this is the element where we go back and we look after the lost ones. The reason I'm mentioning Jagtar Singh Johal is because on the 4th of June, he was well. The 11th of June, he goes to hospital. No post-mortem is allowed. The Indians are saying they've poisoned him. The Indians knew that he was dead before anybody else knew he was dead. The UK government didn't allow a post-mortem to take place. And when we found an independent person, they had put Khanda's body into a freezer, which meant that the body had to be taken out of the freezer for 5 days before a post-mortem could have taken place. And by this time, Khanda's body had more or less rotted. And some of you can see the pictures of Jagtar Singh Johal, the skin's gone dark. But I was personally involved in trying to help get his post-mortem done, but you've seen the pictures of the funeral. That's the kind of reception he had, because that's the person he was. 35 years old, he gave his life to the Panth. Made nothing for himself, left his mother, has left his sister. That's activism. And so it's really important that we don't forget those ones that do this. So that's the reason the charity that we'd set up, is because we need to help them to come out. So my benti to you guys in terms of the charity is going to be, please follow it on social media. Please donate whatever you can to the charity, because we can get individuals out of this corrupt and weird and jalebi system and the legal system. And we can bring those people on, because today you're talking about Jaggi. You have listened to me the whole time. Hopefully you understood me. But you care about Jaggi, that's why you're listening. But there are our other brothers, there's sisters that are sitting in jails that nobody knows about. and they believe nobody cares about them. So it's important that we also do what we can to bring them out as well. Sorry, Benji, I took that extra time. And
No, I appreciate that you took the time to share with us that this night is about activism and activists. And at the heart of it, we need to put faces to names and to experiences, because like you said earlier, it could be any one of us in the room and any one of our family members. And I think we can't lose sight of that. But at the same time, every piece of your experience that you've shared with us speaks to the fact that the biggest piece, the biggest element we take away and the biggest message we take away is that we can't stop and we shouldn't stop. But I want to take the time. I know that we've all been sitting for a bit. So if you need a moment to stand up and sit down, I recommend everybody take that moment now, because we're just going to open up to some questions for VG. So if everybody like to stand up and then sit down, I do recognize that it's almost 9 o'clock, and I think it's a good idea to just kind of give your legs that quick stretch, please.
do you do this at work as well? Stand up and sit down?
So if anybody's got any questions for Gurpreet Singh, you can ask them now. We've got about 5 minutes, so if you have any questions, the space is open for questions.
Okay. Please, take a seat. We're going to open it up to questions for VG, and then
I think we've got a question right.
yeah,
in the
and there's
middle
another one
there.
over there.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Perfect. So
Benji, don't give it to Jasveer Singh.
Yeah. Go ahead. You can, or if you want to come to the mic.
can you bring him the mic?
Yeah.
Perfect.
ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ
ਖਾਲਸਾ, ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ।
ਬਹੁਤ ਧੰਨਵਾਦ ਗੁਰਪ੍ਰੀਤ ਸਿੰਘ ਜੀ। ਵੈਸੇ ਤਾਂ ਬੜੇ ਡਿਟੇਲ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ 2 ਟਾਕ ਸ਼ੋ ਅੱਜ ਕੀਤੇ ਆ, ਉਹ ਸੋਸ਼ਲ ਮੀਡੀਆ 'ਤੇ ਨੇ ਕਾਫੀ ਸਵਾਲ ਜਵਾਬ ਸੀ, ਪਰ ਇੱਕ ਸਵਾਲ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਹੁਣੇ ਹੀ ਮੇਰੇ ਦਿਮਾਗ 'ਚ ਆ ਰਿਹਾ ਸੀ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਸਾਰੀਆਂ ਗੁਰਦੁਆਰਾ ਔਰਗੇਨਾਈਜੇਸ਼ਨ ਜੰਗ ਔਰਗੇਨਾਈਜੇਸ਼ਨ ਇੱਥੇ ਨੇ, ਅਤੇ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਗੱਲ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚੋਂ ਪ੍ਰੈਜ਼ੈਂਟ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਇਸ ਵੇਲੇ ਹਿਊਮਨ ਰਾਈਟਸ ਦੀ ਵਾਇਲੇਸ਼ਨ ਚੱਲ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ ਜਾਂ ਹਿਸਟਰੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਨਵੀਂ ਹੈ ਉਹਦੇ ਸੰਬੰਧ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੀ ਮੇਰੇ ਦਿਮਾਗ 'ਚ ਆ ਰਿਹਾ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਜਿੰਨੇ ਗੁਰਦੁਆਰਾ ਸਾਹਿਬਾਨ ਨੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਸਾਰੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਵਧੀਆ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਉਲੀਕਦੇ ਹਾਂ। ਸਾਡੀ ਕੋਸ਼ਿਸ਼ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ ਚੰਗੇ ਪ੍ਰਚਾਰਕ, ਚੰਗੇ ਕਥਾਵਾਚਕ, ਢਾਡੀ, ਕਵੀਸ਼ਰ ਸੱਦੀਏ।